What's up, everybody? Welcome to the round 3 player ratings video. This is so much easier to film after a win, particularly after a good win. And that's exactly what we had. Carlton against the Fremantle Dockers. It was round 3. For those of you who have never watched a player ratings video, welcome, first of all. Secondly, how it works is this. I just like to start the conversation in this video. I'll go through every player that played, give them a rating out of 10. You guys will finish the conversation in the comments and make any adjustments to any ratings that you see fit. Just got to make the case why you think they need to change, and we'll go from there. But I have a feeling today's going to be relatively easy. I don't think we're going to disagree too much. I mean, we might. Who knows? But there's going to be plenty of high scores because it was a great performance. It was a great team performance all round. And without getting too carried away, that's an absolute lie. I'm absolutely going to be carried away today. I'm looking forward to bringing this to you. So I'll start, as I always start, in the back line. Parks, Jones and Plowman. Parks made his debut, and I've got to say, he was very impressive. Did his job. You know, Teague talks a lot, and he uses the same rhetoric very consistently. You know, play our way, do your job. I thought Parksy did his job. Love the way his endeavour. He plays that life or death footy. He plays without a sense of entitlement. Obviously, it's his first game, so I want to see him get a few more under his belt. But, first impressions count for a lot. And I thought he made a very, very good first impression on the supporter base. It just started with his first spoil, then his first intercept mark. And I cannot see him getting dropped next week. I think he has to play. And that's just such a positive for us. And to inject new energy into the group, which allows, the other guys to feed off that is really important. And I was wrapped with him. He's had the, 13 touches. It doesn't really matter about the stats, as Teague said. It's just more about the way he played. But he did both. So, I gave him an 8. Jones, I thought Jones was back to his best. That's the sharp-looking Liam Jones. When he plays well, he plays with like an inspirational vibe. Yeah, you just see the way he goes for, the way he flies for the footy, the way his effort indicators stack up. He's just a real joy to watch when he's playing well. And we didn't see that in the first 2 rounds, but we saw that against Freo. He's had 20 touches and taken 9 marks. And I think he had 605 metres gained. And that was a feature of his game yesterday, which was interesting. His kicking. He even had a few inside 50s. He was really aggressive offensively. And that really unlocked something for us that we haven't seen from him in a while, if ever. So I gave him a 9. I don't know how I didn't give him a 10. Maybe I should give him a 10. You can let me know in the comments what you think. But I wrote down a 9. Plowman, I thought he was just as good in terms of his role. Loved what he did. He needed to respond. He had a lot of pressure put on him last week. Obviously, we lose to Collingwood. He's smiling, and body language maybe wasn't where the supporters wanted it to be. He conceded the first goal to Walters, and I could just hear some of the comments in the crowd. And it's tough. We've got to be very careful of how we berate the players when we do. But he responded really well after that. If anything, it was more impressive how he played, even though he conceded the first goal to Walters. He was just remarkable. His offensive game was good. And I think that's something he probably needs to bring to the table for the fans to really appreciate him a bit more, which is unfortunate because he's a job doer. He's not meant to be an offensive player, but he does have the ability to become an offensive threat. So I enjoyed his game. I gave him an 8. Let me know what you think about that, but I thought that was reasonable. That's what my gut told me to give him, so I did. Next up, it's Doherty, Wiedering and Saad. Doherty, again, we asked this bloke. We asked him to step up, lead from the front, and he did. He and the other co-captain. Adam Saad, who I'll get to in a moment, he was heavily tagged and he was pretty much sat on. And it allowed Doherty to roam free. And he took the intercept marks and he did the hard stuff. And the symbolic moment of Sam Doherty's game happened right in front of me yesterday. There was a contest which he actually lost. He was going one-on-one to the ball with Liam Henry. It was a mark. And he got absolutely poleaxed. And he came off second best and he was hurt. But the game requires you to go when it's your time to go. That's what the game asks of you, especially as a captain, and that's what he did. He would be sore right now, but that's what it's all about, and that is what the fans ask for, and that is why we will cheer loud and proud for him today, because he was sensational. I loved his game, loved his leadership. He reminded me of dare I say it, he really reminded me of 2017 Doherty. He's had the 28 touches. He's gone at 85% disposal efficiency. He's taken 12 marks, 400 metres gained. That's Doc. That is Doherty right there. That's our man. That's our boy. So I gave him a 9 for his game. Weeders, I actually loved the battle with he and Taberner. I really did. I thought it was a really good battle. For the most part, it was one-on-one. Obviously, given where the modern game is at, there's a lot of zoning off and switching. But I loved his game. I gave him a 7. I didn't think he was as good as the others, but I still thought he definitely did his job. Some kicking was a bit errant from him, which was unlike Weeders, but definitely I thought did his job, as pretty much all of them did. So that's how I felt about Weeders' game. Saad, as I mentioned before, he was pretty heavily tagged, and fair play to, I think it was Travis Collier that was on him. He was just, anytime Saad had the ball, he had someone within, less than half a metre, and so he didn't really get off the leash too much. Early in the first quarter, he had a few running bounces as well, and he looked ominous, but they really locked him up, did a really good job there, Freo. He still had the 21 touches, which is symbolic, because we talk about when it's not your day, can you still reach a minimum standard? And I mean, the fact that he hasn't had his best game, he's had 21 touches, gone at 76% disposal efficiency, 427 metres gained. He's still pretty much done his job. So although I didn't find a way to have him with the high score, I still gave him a 7. I thought he and Weeders were very similar in again, standing in the team, expectations, and how they executed. So a 7 for Saad. Next up, we've got Walsh, Curnow, Nunes, Sammy Walsh. What do you mean? It's Brownlow Walsh. I was a guest on the Lace Out podcast a couple of weeks ago doing the season preview, and I was asked about, Cripps is the best player in your team, blah, blah, blah. What's he going to do this year? And I actually said, no, I think Sam Walsh is the best player in our team. I've been saying it since before round 1, and I'm very happy that he's continued on. I really do think he's our best player. Not that it matters who's our best player, but I just think he's growing and growing. He's hard on himself when he doesn't take a mark that is really difficult. He demands so much more of himself than we realise, and it's a pleasure to have him in the side. And I've probably said that 8 times since he started his career, and I'll say it again. I loved his game. He wants more. He demands more of himself and of his teammates, and we love to see it. 37 touches, 75% disposal efficiency. He's a ball magnet. He's all of the above. 10 out of 10 for me. Loved Sam Walsh's game. He's a third-year player. Just a reminder about that. Curnow, again, another one who probably for the first time in probably ever that he's had the question mark about, we should start thinking about Ed Curnow and moving on, and Setterfield and Kennedy and Stocker and blah, blah, blah. Ed was sensational. He was sensational. He matched up a lot of the time, from what I saw at the ground, on Andrew Brayshaw. Did his job. And that's kind of where I think we need to use Ed. We need to use him to his strength, which is really playing a lockdown role. That's really where he plays his best footy, I think, for the most part. But he's won plenty of the ball himself. He's had 25 and a goal. I mean, what else do you want? He's gone at 64%, which is Ed. He's more of a territory type midfielder, gets the ball moving forward, but you can't question his endeavour and his effort and what he brings in terms of the Carlton spirit. So for that reason, I gave him a 9 for his game. Really enjoyed it. Same with Jack Nunes. He is becoming a favourite. He's just growing and growing. He's becoming a really good player. 23 touches, 8 marks and a goal. He's gone at 82% disposal efficiency. Some of the kicks that he was able to execute yesterday were really impressive. Across the body, 45-degree angle kicks, but with length. Loved his tenacity on the ground. His voice on the ground was a feature that I noticed yesterday. He's a leader, dare I say it. He talks and presents like a leader, and it matters to him. And he's a guy that does not play with a sense of entitlement, and I love it. And I think he needs to be given a bit more respect than what he maybe has. And for me, he's an absolute staple in this team. So I gave him a 9 for his game. Next line, we've got Fogarty, Cripps, Betts, Fog, Dog, Bog. He is the man. I'm telling you, this guy is not just... When he first came to the club, I thought, young player, he's in that 2017 draft. He might be a role player for us. No. This kid, he's got serious talent and serious work rate. And when you combine the two together, you have a serious player, and that's what he is. Very impressed with him. He's a goer. And you look at him, he kind of plays, and I don't want to get too carried away, but I will. But he plays like, it just makes sense. He's been in a system where he's been behind Selwood, Duncan, Dangerfield, Menegola, and these types, and he hasn't been able to get a game, and he's been learning off them for his entire career. He plays the game the right way. He's really endeared himself to the fans. He's had 25 touches, 7 marks, 7 tackles, and he's kicked a goal. Probably could have kicked 2. He's gone at 80%, and I'm just stoked with him. I gave him a 10. I dare say he'd be leading the best and fairest at the moment. That'd be my best guess. So really happy with Fogarty and what we've received from him so far as a fan base and as a football club. And I'm just wrapped for him. Cripps, it's just so good to be talking about Cripps in this way. He absolutely did his job. We asked the question of both of them. Both of them we asked the question of. To lead the way from the front, they needed to grow as leaders. And the opportunity yesterday was interesting because it was a younger side, a good side, Freo. They played very well the week before, but ultimately they were a younger side, and the game requires you to be physical and assert yourself. And, when the Dockers tried to get under our skin and throw their weight around, Cripps was there to really be that symbolic, that beast. He wanted to intimidate, and that's kind of what he has to do. That's what I expect of him. Now, he doesn't need to be a bully. He doesn't need to go over the top. He doesn't need to be a dog like Jordan Lewis was when he played. But he does need to assert himself. And I loved it. I loved him getting into Sarong and Chera. And, it just brings out the dark side in me as well. And, there's something else that comes. It brings something else within when you see your captain play like that. And I'm sure the rest of them walk taller knowing that Cripps has their back. And that's the other thing as well. There was a lot of that. There was a lot of, if someone was tackled and jumped on, someone else was ready to bump that Fremantle player and get him off our players. And there was a lot of flying the flag. And I love it. He's kicked 2 goals. He's had 34. He's won some free kicks. He didn't use the ball very well. He's gone at 64%. But the game, he was asked to be a crash and bash contested ball yesterday, and he did that perfectly. I thought he was arguably best on ground in a game where there were quite a few players who put their hand up for that title. And so I gave him a 10. Got to reward him. Got to reward the skipper because he had that leadership pressure on him as well. And, the media were talking about his contract and whether he's worth it. And he was questioned and he responded. So that's how I felt about Cripper. Betts, I gave him a pass mark, gave him a 5. So at the game, I actually said to myself, there are probably 3 or 4 where I thought, they're in trouble. They didn't really do much. And the stats will say 4 possessions and a goal for Eddie Betts. But when he and Jack Silvani are in our forward line, the pressure and the ability to actually lock that ball in the forward line is there. It's absolutely there. He's a smart footballer already. He's been around the traps for a while now. Would love for him to win, obviously, a lot more of the ball. But ultimately, he's there to put that pressure on. He blocks for Harry, which is something that probably didn't show on the screen. And it didn't because when I got home and watched the replay, I didn't really see it. But he blocks and creates space for Harry. And what I realised yesterday, we have a pretty inexperienced forward line in terms of games played. So that's kind of, I think, why we've got a Mitch McGovern at the football club to sort of help Harry and hopefully Charlie with their development. Levi, I don't really see him as a voice on the ground, whereas Eddie was an absolute voice on the ground. He made sure positioning was done the right way. He made sure Harry was freed up. He made sure he bumped and blocked. And those things don't get seen, but I definitely noticed them on the ground. So I gave him a pass mark for his game, gave him a 5. Love to see him kick the goal. And you see the energy he brings. We're an emotional bunch. And the players feed off the energy. We create a lot of energy and a lot of noise. And Eddie absolutely sparks that for us. So I can definitely see the value in him. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out because obviously Fisher and Martin are out. Cunningham's in the 2s. Durden's there as well developing. So we'll see how it plays out. But just love to see Eddie play and play in a win and do his part for the team and for his mates. So that's how I felt about Eddie. Next up, it's Makai, Kaspalt and Silvani. Harry is a fascinating study. He is a fascinating study. He's kicked 7 goals, 5. He arguably should have kicked 10 or 11. And we're kind of left wanting more. The guy's played 51 games of football. And he's kicked a genuine bag of goals. 7 is a genuine bag in the olden days and now the modern game as well. And I mean, I found myself thinking about him and his set shot routine and, the kicking around the body and all of that. And it sort of comes down to two things. I either believe that the game is moving and evolving, and this is what the players are more comfortable doing when they kick for goal. Very similar to how they do it in Ireland with the Gaelic. It's around the body. It might be a bit more comfortable. They might get better purchase on the ball, and maybe the game is just moving in that direction. And maybe we'll have a situation where set shots are now taken like that, and the umpires or the AFL allow for that run around the body and that arc to happen. And if that's the case, well, Harry's ahead of the curve. He could be revolutionising or part of the revolution of the set shot. If that's what he's comfortable in doing, and he's kicking it more times than what he's not, then fair enough. Having said that, I still do think you need to have the fundamentals to go back on. Like sometimes a set shot doesn't need to be so difficult. And I think a lot of them who do the around the body kick, they just don't take their time. They want to rush and play on straight away. So if he's going to do it, which he did it twice in the third quarter, literally right in front of me, he took his time. Now my sister was sitting next to me, screaming at him to let him know to take his time. Don't know if he heard, but he did that, kicked 2 in a row from the same spot. He actually missed the third one. He completely shanked it. So I don't know where you guys sit on the whole set shot thing, but Teague summed it up pretty well. If that's what he's comfortable with, and if he's kicking with conviction in that style, then you got to back him in almost. I would love for him to have kicked 10, but we're talking about a guy that's kicked 7 goals. Let's be. I think we need to be grateful for how good he could be, but also stay in the moment and realize how good he was. So I gave him. Having said that, I gave him a 9 because of how much room for improvement he still has. I might be harsh. Maybe I should give him a 10. I'll let you correct me in the comments if you feel that it's necessary, but my gut feeling said a 9 for whatever reason. So I think I'm being a bit harsh. So we'll see what you think. Kaspalt, he was another one that at the game, I left the game saying, oh gosh, Kaspalt's in trouble. That's 3 games in a row where he hasn't done his job. But when I watched the replay on the TV, I realised how much he threw his weight around, and that's very important to me. I want our players, if they're not going to be dominating and getting the possessions, they've got to be throwing their weight around and being physical and imposing themselves. And I thought Levi did that. He actually hurt Hayden Young, which you never want to see a player injured, but Levi fucking crunched him. That's what we want. That's Levi. Look at the size of him. That's how we want him to play. He's very important for us structurally because he can give us reps in the ruck. And, Mitch McGovern played pretty well in the reserves on the day before, so I would think he probably comes in, but I don't think he comes in at the expense of Levi because we don't then have that backup ruck cover. So it's an interesting one. It's going to be a very, very interesting one, but I think Levi did his job. Upon watching the replay, I'm happy that I did. I thought he did his job. He needs, I would love for him to go to that next level now and start clunking the marks, kicking the goals, getting a little bit more cleaner. But maybe that's just the reality of a guy who hasn't had a proper preseason. It's been interrupted. He's been underdone. And they're working him into it. And they understand how important he is for the team structure. So I gave him a 5, just a pass mark. But definitely an improvement on the week before because he was willing to throw his weight around. Next is Jack Silvani. I think I spoke last week about the Carlton identity, and I've now left round 3 saying Jack Silvani. You never want to put a player ahead of the club, but Jack Silvani is Carlton. He is the lifeblood and the soul of the Carlton Football Club. He is our connection from the present to the past, and he plays like it. He plays with the Carlton spirit. The 3rd and 4th and 5th efforts, he fights for front spot. What more can I say about him? I'm proud of him. I really am proud of him. I'm very, very proud of him. And he's had a turbulent off-season in the sense of the controversy and dad. And he could have very easily turned his toes up and said, "Fuck this. I don't want to work hard." But he deserves a lot of credit for the way he's been playing. He was hurt last week. He missed. He comes back. You could excuse him for being a little rusty. He wasn't. He was good. Needed to kick one of those, probably 2 of those goals, but the first one he missed was disappointing, just for him because he does the hard work. But I'm sure he'll have a game where he kicks more straight. So I gave him an 8 for his game. Absolutely love what he brought to the table. Next up is Pinonet, Williams, and Gibbons. Pito does his job doer. I'm really happy that we have 5 or 6 just job doers who they're not marquee players, but they play a role and they compete hard. And Pito does that. So I gave him a 7. Zack Williams, upon watching the replay, I loved what he brought. He brought a toughness. It wasn't his day. He got hurt. He came back on. He toughed it out. Then he got a ball to the stomach or the groin area. And then he copped a bump to the head as well. There was just a lot going on. But he managed to just find a way to grit his teeth. And he wanted to be out there. And it was evident to me how much it meant to him to stay out there and fight it out. And that is an underrated, low-key, important thing for me with him yesterday, because the marquee players that are on the big money, they can be princesses at times. I didn't get that vibe from Zack Williams. He didn't dominate the game, but I thought he found a way to find the minimum standard for his performance. And so for that reason, I gave him a 7 for his game. And there's going to be a game where it turns around and everything sort of falls into his favour because of the way he works. So I'm happy with what I saw from him. Obviously, he can be a lot better than what he was, but he did get hurt, so he did battle for us. Next up, Michael Gibbons. He's a 2-time JJ Liston Trophy winner. He was named on the ball. He played more minutes on the ball, and I think we need to pursue with it. It was a fucking relief to see him playing more minutes on the ball. The guy has footy IQ. He really does. He's got a smart football brain. He's a delight to watch. Plays the game the right way. Works hard. Does the crafty things. He's got a combination of everything, and he just seems to be growing incrementally by the week. And that happens. That compounds year on, year out, and I'm just happy for him. I gave him a 9 for his game. Loved it. Interchange bench, we've got Paddy Dow, Murph, Samo, and Cottrell. Paddy Dow, another one. He was the other one where I left the game saying, oh, he's in trouble. He just seemed to be rushed. When I watched the replay, I saw a few of the head knocks that he copped. Did that affect his game? Maybe it did. I'm not sure. But he just didn't look composed like what we saw in the preseason. I think there was a particular moment, one of his first few possessions, where I think he was coming up to a contest, and Sean Darcy, I think, was there, I believe it was. And Paddy Dow usually steps around that contest. He got crunched. Again, did that hurt him and affect the rest of his game? I'm not sure. But after that moment, I just found every time he got the ball and disposed of the ball, there was a rushed mentality and energy around him. And what I've noticed with the players who are playing well is they're able to think their way through such contests. The same contest that Dow was in, they were able to think their way through it. I felt like he just didn't have that level of composure. And the big question is, do you pursue with him? Do you give him another chance? Or do you put him in the VFL and on the reserves and you bring in Kennedy or Stocker, who obviously don't have as much pace as what Dow has, but I didn't feel like we even really saw the pace that he has. Having said that, there was a particular contest, and I mentioned it earlier and in my review, that everyone had a moment where they needed to crack in and hit that contest hard, and Dow was no different, and he did. I believe it might have been end of the third, maybe start of the fourth. He gave away a free kick, but it was a very vicious tackle, and that's all I can ask for him. It might have not been his game offensively, but when the time came for him to lay that tackle or get into that contest, I thought he did it relatively well. I didn't find a way to give him a pass mark for his game, which is interesting given we won by so much. So I gave him a 4 because I know he's got more talent than that. I've seen better from him. I know he is better than that. So gave him a 4. So you'll let me know what you think about that. Murphy, he was one where I left the game thinking, hasn't had a lot of the ball, but when I got home, watched the replay again, I found myself saying, nah, Murph was fine. He was fine. Offensively, he was good for us. Would love, obviously, for him to win more of the ball. I had to listen to the List Cloggers podcast during the week, and Dill Buckley and Daniel Gorringe were talking. And I think what I love to do, and when I try to learn this game, because I'm someone that hasn't played it at the highest level, so you've got to listen to the little hints that are being given to you from former players. And Dill Buckley said that half-forward role is where you go to end your career. It's one of the hardest roles on the ground. You don't get a lot of the ball. And that's kind of where Murphy finds himself right now as we look to evolve into this next generation of the Carlton Football Club. But again, when the time came for him to lay that tackle and stick that tackle in that fourth quarter, he did and gave him a tick. So I gave him a 6 for his game. I didn't think he was as poor as what people were making out last night. And yes, I know I'm biased towards him, but that's because of what he's done for this football club, and I appreciate him. And I love the fact that, defensively, when it was his time to stick that tackle, he did. So gave him a 6. Definitely room for improvement, and it's going to come. If he keeps working hard, he's going to have that game where it's 20-22 and a goal or two. So that'll come. Samo, I actually loved Samo's game. I really did love Samo's game. I was really impressed. He had the 20 touches at 95%. We know he uses the ball well. He's had 269 metres gained, which sort of tells me he's not kicking it long, but whatever, that's okay. That's kind of what I want to see from Samo. That's the standard of performance that I would expect from Samo. He's too good of a ball user to not get it 20 times, and that requires a work rate. What I saw at the ground, I'm not sure if you guys noticed it on the screen, but every time he, disposed of the footy, he was willing to sprint to that next effort. And that was very important, because the work rate for me is really what's going to separate Samo from becoming the player that we think he can, especially in this halfback role. So I gave him an 8 for his game. And Cottrell, the late in. He was a late in. There was a little bit of, at the reserves game, he was on the boundary line right where I was sitting, and someone asked him if he was playing, because obviously he wasn't playing for the reserves, and he was a little bit coy. So I don't know if there was a plan to have him playing, or if Setterfield was showing symptoms of that gastro the day before, who knows. But anyway, he's come in. He looks to have put on a layer of size. He looks a little bit quicker, dare I say it, and he looked like his ability to win the ball had improved. Now, unfortunately, he sort of fizzled out a little bit as the game went on, but his first half, make no mistake, it was excellent. Really loved his game, and I was impressed with the fact that I left that ground saying, okay, that looks like Cottrell stepped forward in the right direction in terms of his development. He's showing something else, and that was the key takeaway for me. So I was really pleased with that. I gave him an 8 for his game. That's how much I enjoyed it. So yeah, I feel like I've blinked, and that player ratings video has done. That was really enjoyable. A win is always the formula and the medicine for anything going on in life, no matter what's going on. A Carlton win helps with a lot. So I hope you've enjoyed the review and the player ratings. It's an interesting one because we've had a Sunday game. It's Monday at the time of recording. We've got a show tonight as well, so it's all jam-packed. Let me know what you think in the comments below of the ratings. Make the case for the changes if you want to put them up or down, and I will make an adjustment, and then I'll update the spreadsheet, and we will continue to celebrate this great win, and hopefully we can have this be the start of our season. We can hopefully square up the ledger next week against the Gold Coast Suns. We're not going to get too carried away. The boys have now set the bar of their effort and their intensity, and we need to continue on, and that's the way it's going to be. So with that, have a great one, and go the Mighty Blues.